Hello, and welcome to another week of the Storied Arcs podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today, we are diving deep into the entire series so far of Shadecraft from Joe Henderson and Lee Garbett. Antonio Fabela, Simon Boland, Rick Lopez Jr. I don't think we mentioned him in the Zero editor. I feel like the title editor can cast a very wide net. So, but anyway, this is one we are talking about this week, and then we can guarantee you that we will have a conversation with Joe Henderson next week.
Yeah.
So very excited about that.
Which we talk about both Skyward and Shadecraft. So we saved until after Mike and I discussed Shadecraft, so we could fold in kind of both the books that Joe and Lee Garbett have done together over at Image. As of yet, we haven't done the Big Burn, which is their most recent book over at Distillery, but maybe who knows, someday we'll get to that one down the line. But yeah, we're getting into Shadecraft here. Just the one volume, 5 issues, came out a couple years after Shadecraft, after Skyward, and so again, I think this is the kind of thing where something that we've talked about before, this idea of when creative teams come together to work on a project and then they go and work on a creator-owned thing. Oftentimes when we talk about that, that's a writer and an artist, or writers and artists get paired over at Marvel or DC for some kind of for-hire work, and they do a run on some book, and then they decide, hey, let's go then make our own Image book, our own Boom book, or something like that. This is a little different in that they're all Image books, but in terms of Skyward being a story that Joe had and kind of got with Lee to make it into a book, into this book, which I feel is much more of a kind of a collaborative thing. Hey, we did this one time, right? What's another story you want to do? So it was kind of thing of this was, I think, felt more probably like a collaborative story between the two of them versus, and not that Skyward wasn't, but but
Skyward felt like I have an idea who can draw it.
Yeah.
And this time was like reacting to like, okay, I know Lee's going to draw this.
Yeah.
What does Lee really do well?
Yeah. And especially Joe being someone coming from outside comics at the time for Skyward, coming from TV and movies. So having this idea and then kind of figuring out or deciding this would be better told or could be told in comic format, and then getting hooked up with Lee and going forward. You're right. This book then is like, well, now we've already worked together. What's the next thing we want to do? And so I think it's cool to see that progression between.
Well, the wild thing to me is like, this feels like, I love Skyward, on the record for that. Love Skyward, but this feels like a leveling up from Skyward in almost every way. I mean, you don't get to draw the zero gravity crazy stuff, but this one
draw the big crazy shade monsters though.
That's true.
Yeah.
And great variant cover gallery. But this one, like I was praising, like, the first volume, really the whole thing, but the first volume of Skyward was just like a beat by beat masterclass of here's how you deliver. This one delivers by the end of the first page.
Yeah.
By the fourth panel, you have a shocking like leap of faith action from the protagonist, and you're just like, oh my, like we really get thrown into this quickly.
I do think this establishes character faster than Skyward does. I think you work through Skyward and you're trying to figure out a little bit kind of the motivations and the direction of the characters and kind of what their goal is throughout the story. What I like, and my one nitpick about Shadecraft is that early on, from a narrative standpoint, I think it's a little slow, or not slow. It has to do a lot of heavy lifting. Like there's a lot of exposition to get through.
Okay.
I think the story really cooks. But that's it. That's from a narrative standpoint.
On a reread?
From a narrative standpoint, what I like from a character standpoint is that we meet Zadie, and she's already the girl who's afraid of her shadow.
Right.
right? So we don't need to get the origin of that. I like that we're dropped into it and this is her reality and we have to live with that. Now, the part that is a little clunky is when she then recites her whole history to her brother who's in a coma, who is
agreed. No, that is the clunkiest part of the whole thing.
And part of that is just, we got to get through this somehow. I don't know if there are any better ways to do that, but I'm sure little bit there.
Okay. I think that's, I think that's definitely fair. I think the question is not whether there are better ways to do it, but whether there are better ways to do it as efficiently as you could do a whole issue that did a flashback or whatever. And it's that's not efficient, but that is it would feel more natural to do that at some point and just have a whole issue about it. I don't need to see that. And you ended up getting a little flashback about it later anyway, but just one page of her plopping down on his bed, exposition dump, and you move on, keep going. I'm it got a free pass from me.
Well, and I'm with you. The idea of a full character flashback, I don't think we need to see that either, especially
if this was a 30 issue series. Maybe
if it was a 30 issue series, but that would also mean that the end of the first volume would have to be different, because the end of this volume, which is the end of this book, is her brother coming back, right? So once he's back, and that's the next part of the story, we then don't need the flashback as to how we got into, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a way to do that. I don't think that's the way I would have liked to have seen it in this story. And again, I'm with you that there are. It's overtly clunky to me, and it's well, what if we didn't get that, and that came out from if there was a way for her to explain that to someone who wouldn't already know, there's just something very, I keep using the word clunky, but it's very clumsy to me about I'm going to recite this to my brother who's in a coma. You know, why would you be? It's like when you have characters, when you're establishing characters in a story, in a television or movie, and they're referring to them by their first name or their full name or something, or they're telling you something that you would already know because you're my brother, but you would already know this. But I'm gonna tell you the thing that happened in our childhood that was so formative that if we were actually brothers, I would just say the thing and you would know what it is. But instead, I have to lay it out beat by beat for you, stuff like that, where it's the seams of the story work are so visible at that point. But you are right; it's just like a 1-2 page thing, and you do kind of get the history. You do move on, and we get off it quickly. But in that moment, for me, it just it came to a screeching halt. It's okay, here's what we got to get to. Just kind of, just get through it and then move on. But on this reread for this book, it brought me to a screeching halt right in that one moment. And I was just overtly aware of the setup of the story, the construction of the story. And I generally don't like when that happens, but again, I'm with you. When you only got 5 issues here and you got to get this information out somehow, right? There has to be some explanation. Not a full origin, but we have to have some explanation of what her family situation is specific to Ricky, right? Specific to that, and understanding of a little bit of what maybe Zadie's relationship to Ricky is, and vice versa. So you have to establish that somehow without the full on flashback, unless they did the thing where the book starts and the first 3 pages are Ricky's accident.
Yes.
And then you cut, 1 year later, that kind of thing, there's a world where they maybe could have done that. I don't know if that's better or worse, but you know what I'm saying? You establish that and you think Ricky's your main character.
Right.
There's a bit of a feint there. I don't know if that works totally.
Yeah, what was the book that did the big feint like that? Did Radiant Black do that, but for the whole first arc?
Yeah, kind of.
Where they did a big you think this is the superhero, and then it's
his friend.
Yeah, it's
guy.
no, he's in a coma now, and it's his friend.
So it has been done. They did it with DC did it a few years back with their Superwoman book, where it was originally solicited, and they even had covers made up. Which it was the idea was that it was Lois who got part of Superman's powers and became Superwoman, but in actuality, it was Lana Lang who got them, and they solicited covers, and they just basically changed the hair color and the style to make her a brunette for the solicitations, and then the actual covers, she was a redhead because that's what Lana Lang is, and so there was kind of a bait and switch on that. That no, it was actually Lana. This is a Lana Lang book. That was a fun book, but that bait and switch didn't go over so well. So it's not a perfect
Marvel
solution.
does that with movie trailers. Where like, I just remember the Infinity War, like,
but movie trailers lie all the time. So there is.
I don't think they're supposed to, but that is the era we live in.
But yeah, they do. So again, I don't know if that's the best solution, but I think it's a solution maybe. But again, once we get through that, but again, all that is. We already understand kind of who Zadie is. We understand what her place in the world is, like her social status in school. We understand her current relationship with her parents, specifically with her mom. And so getting some of those details out, they're important. I think we have to have them for the story. It didn't feel like the most elegant way to me. And maybe part of it is just, not that they were planning on do 5 issues, but the fact that it only went 5 issues. If they had spent a whole like half an issue getting through that would have been a little more. I would have felt like it was a lot more wasted space and time then. So it was probably the best way to get through it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, my personal take was we didn't actually need any information about her brother that like until his character became part of the plot, like
until he formed.
Until like his mom decides to like, put him in a treatment center or something like that. Or like you hear all the comments, like you still get comments from people at school about her brother. And I think we probably could have pieced it together. But anyway, I don't want to like harp on the only nitpick. Like, and really the only nitpick with the book.
It is my only nitpick with the book. Yeah.
Because like, first of all, Lee, gorgeous. Like just when you think the shadows couldn't be any prettier, there's that thing in the first issue where like she's getting totally covered by shadows, and then the front porch light turns on, and just like the beams of light coming across. It's just like, my gosh, this guy's great.
I mean, hold on. I'm sorry, that first full page splash. When Zadie looks back and just that
and you can
column coming
kind
up.
of see a face in it. Like,
maybe.
But you're kind of like asking yourself. But this is the one where in issue 1, I was thinking to myself, is this like I guess the title of the book sort of gives it away. It's Shadecraft. But I was like, is this I Kill Giants? Like, is this in her head? Is this her way of dealing with grief? Especially then when you get the story about her brother, and I'm like, oh, this could all be metaphorical in her head or whatever. Yeah. But it would be weird to call the book Shadecraft. Shadecraft. Yeah. If you couldn't actually, do craft, something.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but that's a great point. This idea that there is a world where this whole story is just the way it manifests in her head. That's
the beautiful thing about it is like he has picked this thing that is like, it is a real thing, and it's also an allegory. Mm-hmm. And it's not an either or; it's a both and. For Joe here, so he gets to have his cake and eat it too. You get to say all you want about high school awkwardness and being the less popular sibling at school, and being afraid of your own shadow, and
living in the shadow,
living in the shadows of your older brother. Like all of this stuff, you get to bask in all of the allegory and metaphor, and then you also get to do the cool stuff of inventing a type of magic. That I haven't really seen anything like it before. The closest I can think of, Oh boy, am I gonna be able to remember the name of the books? Charlie Holmberg, Holmberg. She had a series of books called The Paper Magician. There's the Paper Magician, the Glass Magician, the Plastic Magician, and maybe one other one. And each one was like they are magicians who specialize in a certain material. Um,
Okay.
and it was like, like there could be a world where like that type of universe, like, yeah, someone's in charge of the shadows, but like those were all people who had specific powers over specific materials, and shadows are much trickier than that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely, definitely. But
much
I
more ethereal and and ghostly, but also not like it's such like paper, plastic, whatever, those things are all created things, right?
Mhm.
Uh, shadows have existed since cavemen. Well, predates cavemen. Shadows
Yeah,
have existed as long as the sun.
as long as there's been light. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's something so elemental, I think, is what
Definitely. Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
haunting about it. And like everyone has experienced a fear of shadowy things, whether it was a child or an ongoing fear or um like the first time I saw the movie Saw in theaters and I was walking back to my car expecting a flash of light and waking up in a bathtub. It's like, yeah, uh, darkness is scary. And so using it both allegorically and literally is really powerful stuff.
Oh, definitely.
Especially when like so many shapes that you imagine as a kid, Lee is like the more you see them, the more anthropomorphized they get as for the first issue proceeds.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you're right. It's an elemental fear for everyone. You know, there's the whole there's afraid, being scared of your own shadow. Not so it's not just darkness. It is your own shadow. Is the things you see lurking around the corner, right? So it all that's such a fundamental trope in really any sort of kind of scary movie, any horror movie, right?
right.
Every type of every different little twist on horror, the idea of what's lurking behind the corner, you see a shadow, the way it's used either as a feint or, oh no, there actually is something real there. All that stuff is kind of built into our just kind of understanding of story and storytelling. Uh, just it's built into our collective understanding of horror stories, and this way it's not really a horror story, but it kind of is. I think the big through line between Shadecraft and Skyward is that they're both effectively coming of age dramas. You have young
Yeah.
young women, although Willa in Skyward is a little bit older than Zadie here. Zadie's being an actual high schooler, but they're coming of age stories that have this tinge of genre to it. Skyward has this magical realism, sci-fi-ish kind of thing going on, and Shadecraft has this psychological horror fantasy, still kind of magic-y kind of thing going on, you know? But it is still fundamentally, though, a coming of age story. It's about a young person trying to find their place in the world, not knowing where they fit, and then realizing the world's a lot bigger than they ever knew, and then trying to understand and make connection with that. Which are, again, all the main points of a coming of age story. It just so happens that Joe and Lee have thrown these little bends of genre into it.
Sure. Well, in a fantasy coming of age is that you're the chosen one type thing.
Yeah.
And she's got a little bit of that energy too. You find out it's a family thing, but it's a
Yeah.
very select group of people who have the ability to practice shadecraft.
Yeah. Well, but if it were more traditional chosen one story, then she would be the one to then only she can then take down the there'd be some larger there'd be some larger big bad out there. So but yeah, it does have a tinge of that, in that it is just selective to their family.
Like there's something special about you. With like the school counselor who is not really a counselor telling her that.
Yeah. Which though, but that is that is part of the coming of age narrative, though, right? This idea of like not being ordinary. You have the ability to do something greater, to be something greater than yourself, that sort of thing. All those are familiar tropes in these types of stories. It just so happens that this story has that fantasy magical horror bent to it,
Yeah. What do you think of this lack of better word? I antagonist villain, I think feels harsh, but I guess I'm tipping my hand here. By saying that I don't like, I think this is a much stronger, more interesting antagonist than what we got in Skyward. And I can't help but compare them just because same creative team.
I agree. And I think what we said with Skyward is like Barrows as a character is just so overtly and like ridiculously the evil bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, like that said, I'm not questioning the reality of it as we saw our first trillionaire, this past weekend, but I do question, thank you for the air quotes.
No, but I am with you though. Relative to this book, this is the kind of thing that if this book had gone on longer, like if Shadecraft went 15 issues, like Skyward did, at least 15 issues, there obviously would have been some sort of specific thing they have to take down, and it's probably the government organization that the counselor works for. Yeah, and specifically her. That counselor, the person,
or you have to make an unholy alliance with them to overcome the thing and say like, I'm gonna work with you because there's this big bad out there, but we're not on the same side.
Absolutely right. Yeah, because the government's like, no, we need you because there's this big thing out there that we got to take care of. But the government's way of doing it isn't the quote unquote right way of doing it. But they got to. But
then if you let Dan Waters do it, it's the government controlling both sides of the crisis.
Yeah. But for
the extremely cynical, what book would just Homesick Pilots?
Homesick Pilots. Yep. I think for this book, I like that there's no kind of direct villain in this story, because
she's not a villain. She's a former best friend, and like I get it. Like her whole livelihood was built on this thing. Is that a questionable thing to build your livelihood on? Yes. Was her friendship with Zadie's mom genuine? Also, yes.
Probably,
I think she felt genuinely hurt. Yes, all
of it. And then when they walk away, you're like, well, now I got nothing. So,
like, not only do I not have friends or a family, you also just cost me my career and my government.
My career as well. Yeah. So I like that. It is the thing they have to overcome is less some large challenge like that. Some like one main force, and it's more just trying to get everybody on the same page, and it's Zadie coming to, and her mother really, and Ricky, them all trying to come together and see each other in the proper way, right? See eye to eye. Zadie's dad seems pretty chill about things. He
is the coolest dad. I was going to ask you what you thought of him, because he's the only one who like literally has nothing to do other than just be a cool dad.
Just be supportive, be like, I know all this
supportive, already.
Yes, I know all
ride.
This. Yes, I'm cool with all of it. Yeah,
I think it's really his attitude that made me want this to be like a really long, ongoing series. And like, let's say you don't do the like 15 issue arc, but you set it up as an ongoing thing where they're like the Scooby-Doo, like they have a mystery machine van they drive around the country in, they solve things like this, and it's like a little family Fantastic Four type thing where mom and Zadie are the shade crafters, and you give, after brother comes back from being a shadow and he's reunited with his body, you give him a big LED light suit so that he can go in and tame a shadow monster, and dad's the guy in the chair. He's in the van, he's running comms, and it's like, my God, I would read 100 issues of that with a villain of the week.
it absolutely fuels the idea of, because again, the way the book ends, and they do this thing that I will say Saga did back when they went on hiatus, where they do a couple of the black pages where you flip through. Although I think Saga had like 4 or 5 or 6 black pages where you got to the end and you're like, what is happening? What is happening? And then that's it. Here they do that for a little bit, and then you get the view, the perspective of Ricky, obviously he's looking up, and it just, there's a setup for like, oh, I understand what's happening next here. I don't know what their goal is. I don't know where specifically they're going to do. Like, are they going to go after the government, the government group that went after them? Are they just going to go on the run? What's going to happen? I don't know the specifics, but now they are a full family again, and everything's out in the open. Everybody knows everything, and now they can move. And I want to see what happens next with this family. I want to see what happens with the Liu family, and we don't get it, and that's a real bummer, because I think the setup from what we get out of this volume, which I guess it's called one volume, it's just what we get out of the book. It is just the whole book,
the complete series.
I know what the setup here I think is really fun, and also the thing that I really enjoyed with this, and I could see this being a nitpick for other people, but one thing I enjoyed out of this book is that once we get past the first like issue and a half. And basically, once Ricky shows up as a spectral shadow form, which I guess is really the end of the second issue. So the back 3 issues, once he shows up, Shadecraft becomes like 4 genres like at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
Like we get all these different things, and they can move in and out of them. You get more of the horror, more of the magic. You get plenty of the coming of age stuff. You get the family drama stuff. It becomes like a heist movie at some point with like government conspiracies and secret agencies and all that stuff. Like you get a whole bunch of stuff there, which to me says that's set up for this book can go any direction.
Yeah.
They could go hard into like the magic of it. The origin, where does this come from? How does this thing work? They could skip all that and go right into the larger government cover-up conspiracy agency part of it. You know, they could, and it becomes like a spy book. Basically, it could stick with the family drama. Like this book could go in a bunch of different directions because they set it all up in this. You know, I was in the first 5 issues, really in the last 3 issues, they put it all together and they kind of showed their dexterity, moving from different genres and weaving in and out of all of them and weaving them all together. It made me very excited for what this book could have been, what the story could have been going forward. And the more I think about it, like the more bummed I get that it's just like, oh, this is all we get. You know, this is all we have.
Yeah. I tried to we had a good long gap between reading this, like deciding to read it, reading it, and recording this because you were out of town at a convention. But I tried to purge myself from those feelings and reread it and just say like, okay, but what do we can celebrate what we did get. And what we did get was, in my opinion, like a perfect 5 issues.
Yeah.
Like it would have it could have gone on like the carnival stuff where she she throws her first punch after she is like I don't know, it feels like I'm trying to think of is it like Luke Skywalker or like abandoning his training on Dagobah to go fight Vader, where it's just like, okay, you successfully made a shadow bunny that turned into a monster, and now you're going off to fight monsters later that day. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, stick in training just a little bit longer. But that's the nature of characters of this age. And another great writing beat is at the end of the second issue, she's breaking into school trying to get a gun out of her counselor's desk. Like, that's a wild move for like someone her age. And it's perfectly set up because on the first issue, the first page, she goes in, wrecks the fabric of one of her best friendships by misreading a situation. And then, in issue 2 with her shadow brother, is breaking into a school and then going and fighting shadow monsters in public in front of people in issue 3. It's like, man, just buckle up, because she is going to make a wild decision each issue. And there are decisions that, this is a fine line, because I would not make any of those decisions.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen of her, she would. Like, these all
need
track.
to be true. Yeah. I think that there's a great, she has a great line to the not counselor, whose name I forget right now, but she's like she's being told, like, it comes down to control of your emotions to Shadecraft. And she's like, control your emotions. Like, you understand I'm a teenager, right? like the most antithetical thing for a teenager is being in control of your emotions. And so, yeah, right. By making this their protagonist, by having their character be this age, it does give them some narrative freedom to have the character make some reckless choices. Again, not unlike Willow over in Skyward, right? Who is only a few years older, but living in a completely different world. She may not have been someone, just out of high school age versus Zadie, who is high school age, but it gives you that license to say, to let them be impulsive and not make the most rational or the most, efficient decision at a time. It allows them to make, to justify a character making a snap judgment, that you, as a reader, you're like, absolutely the wrong move. Totally the wrong move. But if it feels right for a teenage girl in the situation to do that, for just a kid to act on impulse because they have nothing else, it's all they have, the character, it can work, as long as it feels true to the character that they've built. And you're right, by setting her up that way, of her feeling isolated and disconnected and having very few connections, and then having her impulsively destroy one of those few connections she has, leaving her with even less than she had before, which wasn't all that much to begin with. So we understand very quickly where Zadie fits in the social hierarchy, and kind of what her vibe is, what her get down is. So you're right, when she's in the carnival and is simply reacting, not able to, barely able to read the situation properly, and just goes and acts, it feels right, because that's what teenagers do. But then you also show that when she acts on instinct, that she might actually be better than overthinking it.
Oh, I mean, that's what your great characters, your Jim Kirks, your leap before you look. Type characters. Because I don't like, I relate more deeply to the characters who overanalyze and don't do anything, in a melancholy indie movie. But literally no one wants to see that. No one wants to see a character reach a critical juncture and pause for 10 pages or 10 issues and consider the actions. You want to see characters who act, characters who take ownership, don't sit back and let things happen to them. I think is the big thing that, like, it really seems to me that Joe Henderson understands about writing characters. It's like, these have to be, they are the authors of their own problems and solutions. They're not victims of circumstance. Even though things happen to them, they are proactive about everything. Even
if that action isn't always in their best interest, because they don't know it is. They're I just remembered.
I was going to say, her brother seems like he's pretty passive, which makes him the sidekick. The fact that, I guess this is where you could argue that our antagonist is in fact evil when she gaslights him into believing he's not real. He's not really the brother. It's like, that's pretty evil.
Hold on. It is, but Shadow Ricky's reaction is like, you know what? I kind of thought that too. Like, so
that's what gaslighting is.
Well, no. But it is I don't believe it.
You don't think that's the first time he had the thought?
Yes, I think
Okay.
his reaction, his response to that, I believe, is meant to soften that character, because it's meant to say that Ricky was, as soon as Ricky came back, or as soon as Shadow Ricky kind of formed, that he's had this thought the entire time, but didn't want to confront it because he didn't want to lose his sister again. So I don't think, like, 'cause she didn't have to convince him that he wasn't real. She
Yeah.
just said it, and Shadow Ricky was like, actually, yeah, I mean, like, I've been thinking that the whole time. So I because we ultimately know that isn't the case, because we know that
Well,
was a
but
lie, we
it
look
didn't
back on
mess
it.
with me. Did it not mess with you? Like you didn't buy it for a
Yeah.
second. You were like, no, he's really the
Oh yeah,
brother.
yeah. Oh no, yeah, no. I absolutely did. I absolutely believed at this point. I believe Zadie. Zadie believes it, and I think that
But Zadie
the
questions it too. She's
she
like,
well she
really?
we, well, well
Because like the thing that gave it away to me was, and I remember thinking this in real time was, he has that story that he tells her about how like, how someone like pooped their pants and it was so and so. It was really me. I'm
yeah.
like, is that the type of thing that Zadie makes up and tells herself in her imaginary version of her brother? Maybe, but it seems like not that likely.
Yeah. Well, also, but again, I don't know if this is an imagination of her. I think the idea would be the way you would convince her is that this is a shadow that manifested, that's been with you this whole time. So it's like it's been feeding off of you, off your memories, and was able
Right.
to
It knows everything
reconstitute.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's where you get
Yeah.
suspicious, right?
Yeah. I will say though, looking back, because I'll flip those pages there, in that moment when Shadow Ricky decides to leave Zadie, there are these small little touches where for a few pages there, like, Zadie has no shadow, and you don't really notice it until she goes into Ricky's room, and her parents tell her that they've moved Ricky out to like a special care facility, and she's just standing in the room, and it's very deliberate that there are lights off in the room, and the only light coming in is from the open door, and it's shining behind her onto like an empty bed, and there's no shadow. Her shadow would be casting in front of her on this page, and it's one of those kind of small little things, that if you're not paying attention, you don't notice, but when you look at it, you're like, oh right, obviously the reason this is framed this way is because she would have a shadow there, but she doesn't have one anymore, because her shadow, which is Ricky, but she believes isn't Ricky, has gone off now to the government facility. So
Yeah.
it's like those little things that you see of kind of her kind of her state there, and of course then that leads into these kind of continuing revelations that her mother has this too, that is genetic, it's passed out, and that's where this larger sense of I was going to say conspiracy, right, but the kind of the larger factors at play kind of come into, and again, where this book shifts into yet another genre.
Yeah. Okay. So can I ask you about, I don't like using the P word, but can I ask you about a plot hole potentially?
Sure.
Which, okay. So I was thinking through this and I was like, okay, so was the reason Zadie's mom spending so much time with her brother's body is because she was communing with his shadow? And then I was like, no, that couldn't have been it. If she were, there's no way she would have ever given the body away. If
Yes.
she, but how is it possible that Shadow is living in the house and she can see and talk to shadows and she never noticed that he was her daughter's shadow,
Well, I
or heard them talking
well, so
because
I don't
presumably she could hear them.
the this I think is that Ricky wasn't always her shadow, because
Right.
it
But from the moment that, okay, so granted, but even from the moment it begins, once she's talking out loud and he's talking back to her, or he's making like goofy jokes while she's trying to listen, at family dinner or something,
yeah.
uh, wouldn't they then, or wouldn't she at least hear her son?
Well, I well because well we never see that because as far as we know, this all happens in a matter of like a couple days.
Yes, I believe that's true.
Yeah, but there is a moment though. There is a moment when Shadow Ricky looks in on himself as his mom is like washing his body or whatnot, and she does sense something.
Yeah,
she does sense something there. So I'm
frantically scrolling through my digital copy now.
Yeah, it's after Zadie meets with the guidance counselor, and her and Ricky kind of get antics at the school when Zadie basically tells her like all the stuff that the film has gone through. So if they had been in the house longer together, I think she would have noticed. But I don't think there was enough time for Zadie's mom to kind of pick up on. I don't think Zadie was around long enough since it happens very quickly.
No, you are 100% right. You are 100% right. Yeah. This is page like 48.
Something like that.
Which would be the only time they were all in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
And she immediately senses Ricky's shadow lingering in the doorway.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to, her room. They're getting ready to sneak out. Now, granted, both of those voices are talking in there. I can't believe what you guys have gone through, what mom has gone through, da 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 da. And they're both talking, and presumably just down the hall is, their mom sitting in silence with Ricky's body. But by the time she gets back home, that's the only time they're all three in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
And by the time she gets home, Ricky's body is gone. Well, yeah, right. It's just her dad in the bedroom, but then the next day, the body's gone because the next time they're all together is the meal table where she says, "Why did you give up on Ricky?"
Yeah.
And so anyway, he threaded that needle perfectly because that would have been a disaster, right?
Yeah,
if it was like, oh, she's only a selective, Shadecraft. It's like, no.
Once Shadow Ricky manifests, Zadie isn't home that often because she sneaks out at night, right? And then the next day she starts her training at the school, and then when she comes home, she immediately leaves and goes to the carnival, right? So her interactions with her family, with her parents, specifically your mom, are very, very limited. And then it's only after coming back from the carnival. Again, I think she just goes right to the guidance counselor because she knows she's not a guidance counselor anymore. And then that's when they separate. Then she comes home and Ricky's body is gone. So I think there may be a little question about timeline and like kind of time compression, how much time actually goes by, how many days is this?
No. I think I fully redact like my question.
Yeah.
And again, even if like something like that had happened, it wouldn't ruin the story for me.
Yeah.
Like I accept little plot holes and things like that if the whole grander narrative is working. And here, that's not even an issue we have to work around. So that's great.
Sure. Yeah. How did you feel about the reveal that Shadecraft was this larger thing, that her mother was part of this, and that like when you're reading it in the moment, like how did you feel about like, oh, this is a larger world that Zadie is now in?
I think that's what really sold me on it, was the idea that this is bigger than her, that it has the space. Like, it would be silly if this was 2020 and this type of magic exists in the world and she's the first chosen one ever who's ever encountered it. Like, it makes so much more sense that there's a backstory.
Yeah.
And it even makes sense that it's a little bit like, I don't know, Harry Potter wizard magic, where there are like muggles and magicians, or muggles and wizards or whatever. And like, it tends to go in families, but not necessarily, you might have one kid that is a squib or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, just like all of that works for me. And also, like, it gives you the freedom to do something like truly shocking if you wanted to, where like, in theory, if this were a long ongoing series, Zadie could die and this Shadecraft universe could keep going. And I think that's the strength of not having it be just one person's magic thing.
Yeah, I think and I love once they brought her mom in, when they're infiltrating the government base there, we get to see like basically like a master at work, like when she can like disappear into a shadow and
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that's very
basically
cool.
shadow walk, which is like a that's like a like an RPG move kind of thing. When she disappears into a shadow and Reaper's on the other side of a door, and you're like, oh right, there are there are exponentially higher levels to this stuff, and
Oh
again,
yeah, this is the video game Dishonored.
yeah,
That's what you can do.
yeah, it's shadow walking. Disappear into one shadow within sight and appear in another one, and stuff like that. Because what that tells you is, and what it tells Zadie is, right? There's so much more you can do other than just like making constructs, right? She's not just Green Lantern, where she can make things with her mind. There are all these other levels that she can do and use, if she has time to actually be taught and learn. And it's one of the larger kind of open threads about what the story could be is seeing Zadie come into that power, have her be taught, and see what she can really do when she's fully realized, because she's only scratched the surface of this. Again, it's only been a couple of days as far as the story is concerned, right? And her mother's had years to decades at least to do all this. And so just to see what the powers can be, and to see how they can actually manifest, got me really excited about the possibilities of what they could show on the page. A lot of it's like just showing thinking about what Lee could draw.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the just the things he could do, the things they could show, whatever wild thing Joe could think up, and Lee then just kind of blow out on the page. It got me really excited about what could be as Zadie grows into these powers, and we see them more and more, how they can be used, how they can be shown, and it's all just in that bucket of probably never going to be anymore, a bunch of unanswered questions. But what we did get to see at the end there of issue, were we in issue 5 here? Issue 4. Well, once they attack the base, and we really get to see kind of.
I mean, the base attack felt a little rushed to me.
It is a little rushed, yeah, but
but because it was clearly the last issue, at least, at the time,
or at the very least, it was the close of the arc, right?
Yes, it was the close of the arc.
Yeah, I don't think they had no intention of ending the book at issue 5, but they clearly intended to end issue 5 how they ended it. Like that wasn't meant to be the end, but it was definitely the end of this arc. So they had to get to the point where they could get Ricky back and have him kind of reestablish himself with his shadow, and thus come out of his coma, which means you got to get through the government, the big fight at the government base a lot quicker than maybe you might actually want to,
right? Because I think if it were even 6 issues and you had one issue planning the heist and another one executing it, and telling it in kind of a witty or weird way, or if you knew you were picked up for another 5 issues, you would get all the way to the storage room and find out that he's no longer there. Like, they had an intruder alarm, and it was the first thing
he's out. Moved, and so so stage 1 of the assault,
and then what the next 5 issues are too.
That's sort. They're and then issue 10 ends with him waking up, and then they're definitely there are ways you could go if you could expand it, but I really enjoyed the book once it got into the larger family dynamic, and it's now them together. That's, I think, is what I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the scenes with Zadie's mom and her old handler in the light room, where everything's just washed out and it's super bright, which actually, I'm rereading this right now for this digitally. Even though I have all the issues in print. The book's fairly dark, right? Obviously, we're dealing with shadows. There's a lot of dark blacks and dark blues and grays and whatnot, and then you get to these digitally on these pages that's just washed out white and like super super bright. That you get the same sort of sense when you are in darkness and all of a sudden you're blasted with light and your eyes just wash out, and you can't see anything. I love that effect, and it's so effective. As we cut back between that and Zadie and Ricky outside, like the big kind of kaiju monster fight, cutting back and forth between that was super cool to see, and to get sort of a really tonally different couple of pages and panels, but that's also narratively sensible, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because how would you stop someone who can create shadows is by flooding a room with light, that sort of thing. Although Zadie's mom does find a way to do that regardless, but still, knowing that that's a plausible defense mechanism, and then finding a way to show that, represent that on the page in such an effective way, I think that's so cool.
I totally agree, and I think this biggest strength of this book, my main complaint about like ensemble casts,
Yeah.
too large a cast books, is that there are always two or three characters that I care about and the rest that don't really care.
Yeah.
And it's just blah, blah, blah the whole time they're on the page. I love every member of this cast. It's the perfect size. I could even take a couple more characters the way this is being written. And like, I realize like the big team up ensemble books, like the appeal is everyone's reading it and everyone has their two or three characters.
Yes.
And they're willing to stick with it for that. Whereas I'm like, I kind of need to be interested in all the characters for me to really gel with a book.
I agree with you on this. Totally works with this kind of a smaller condensed cast. If this book were to go on a little longer, I think two things are on the table. One, I think Zadie's two high school friends would come into play more, because the
government might have kidnapped them as hostage or whatever. I mean,
we see 1 month later they're still in school and like Zadie's MIA, but we do see that the government is watching them. The lady is watching them, so they're under surveillance. But they're effectively non-factors in this book, even though you know what I'm saying. Like they
Sure. Yeah. No, I was thinking like the cast, if it were to expand, would be her mom reconnecting with her old, like reuniting the clan.
That was like branch number 2 on this, is that so you get Zadie's friends and you get her mom's friends,
Yeah.
and then it's that pull of Zadie. Does she go back to her old life, these people that she cares about, or stay with her family? And her mom has the pull of, this is who I'm with now, but these are the people I left behind. And so that would be the expansion of the cast there, that I would have liked to have seen. And that would have been, I think, a natural progression, especially with with Zadie's friends being, we saw them and they got a fair amount of page time, but again, they're
and they were interesting. I mean, at least like I guess the guy character, the girlfriend,
love interest,
was kind of like
one best friend, but
that was like, she could have been the exposition device, the girlfriend, girl space friend,
but it's a thing of, there could have been parallel stories, right? Of you're following, maybe the government. You're right. Maybe the government is following them because they're the connection to Zadie, even though Zadie and family are on the run. They're the only known connection is her friends at school. So that would have been cool to see going forward. But I think I agree completely for this 5-issue story, basically just being the family unit, and one effective antagonist, just having that core right there and have everything revolve around them. I think it keeps it really tight and really focused. And I think that helps here, given that, we do keep calling this like a coming of age story, but ultimately by the end, it is just like a family drama.
Yeah. I mean, but a well-earned family drama. Cause again, a lot of family dramas just have a stuff where it's kind of like blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. I guess I'm just a heartless, whatever.
Well, that's probably true. That's probably true. But
that's an unrelated issue.
Yeah. I do like though that, that in these 5 issues, we see like a full, and maybe it's a little quick, I don't know, but it makes sense to me. This really full progression of the relationship between Zadie and her mom, right? Starts out kind of antagonistic or even resentful, right? Moving into anger, and then this understanding of, wait, you have what I have, which is like her greatest fear.
Right.
Zadie's mom's greatest fear is that one of her kids would have what she had. And once that's realized, then there's no choice but to be on the same page. There's no point. There's no other choice other than we have to be completely open and honest. From now on, we're in this together.
Right, because there's no suppressing this ability, right? Like once you're seeing shadow monsters, they're either going to kill you or you're going to learn how to wield it.
And I love that that dinner scene where the shadows are enveloping, and both of them are doing it unconsciously, and they both think they're the one doing it, not the other one, right?
Yes.
And so this idea of like, I'm so sorry that I didn't mean to do that. I lost control, and be like, wait, what do you mean you can do that? I was doing that. And again, once you have that in the open, then the family unit becomes so much more interesting, because the setup really is that her mom is just like overbearing, right? And is very stereotypical. But then when you see the motivation behind that, and then there's no friction there anymore, right? That you can do what I can do, which means in a lot of ways, I see you in a different light now. And that's a terrible pun. But her mother now, she sees something in Zadie that she didn't see before, which on one hand is kind of terrible. You're like, she's still your daughter, right? But then once she realized there is this connection here, she has no choice but then to kind of become fully invested. And also for Zadie and her mom, it goes both ways. She can't be resentful of her mom anymore because she understands the thing that she's been carrying this whole time, what kind of burden this is. And so once you have this, like, and again, the dad who's just like, everything's chill, he's
not the whiny,
no, he's not the wet blanket. Yeah, he's not.
He's not the guy who's like, well, I don't have any power, so I'm just gonna go home and sulk. It's like, all right, I'll get the van.
It's like, we're doing this. Okay, we're doing this. But once
government facility, no problem.
Exactly. But once that family unit comes together, I think the book is incredibly strong, and that's the part that interests me going forward. It's just like the thing right beyond the last page. Is like, oh man, sign me up for more of that. Because that is the version of this book that when it was just Zadie on her own, there's nothing super interesting about that to me. When it's Zadie and the shadow is her brother who's in a coma, that's more interesting to me. And then when it's Zadie and her mother who can do this, and her mother has this history, it's like, so for me, as the world of this book got a little bigger issue by issue, I got more and more interested, because that's the kind of world I want to be in with this story. Because if it were just Zadie and she could do this thing and she was the only one who could do that, I don't think I'd find it as compelling for me personally.
I agree. So this was a 5 out of 5 read for me, like a very rare 5 out of 5. And in some ways, like I would rather have more than have a perfect book. But in some ways there is something so bittersweet about just getting like, I loved every minute of this. And honestly, I would have a lot of fun going back to it, but you might ruin it. So, like, on some level, just leave it alone. Just let it be phenomenal.
If they went back to it now, there's a chance they might ruin it. If they could have just kept going as it was going, different story. Returning back to it now would be tougher. I would still pre-order it as soon as it came on. So Station.
Let's talk about our risk assessment ability here, which is we would both pull it immediately and be like, well, I have my concerns.
If there was an announcement, I absolute blind pull. Because I'm doing that anyway for anything that Joe and Lee do. I did that for the Big Burn when it came out in Distillery, because I was like, oh, it's these guys again, so that's just an automatic blind thing. But if they said that they're coming back to Shadecraft, there was a Shadecraft volume 2, I'd be so hype. And
by the way, it's not spoiling anything to say they've still got it from page 1 of the Big Burn. The chemistry, the writing and art chemistry here is just crackling from the get-go of every book they do.
The Big Burn, we can say real quick, is just, it's not a coming of age story. It's not a teen story. It is a more adult focus. It's about 2 adults. But there's still
and if you like the heist aspect of this story, they lean further into heist.
And what I'll say also, this is a through line, I think, between Shadecraft, Skyward, and the Big Burn. It's not the coming of age part. That's specific to the first 2 books. This idea of family and what will you do for family and the lengths you would go, and it doesn't matter that all of these books have a genre tinge to it, whether it's supernatural, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's fantasy, whether it's horror, whatever it is, they all have that bent to it. But at their core, they really are about what people would do for family, for the ones they love. How can they get them back? How can they reconnect with them? How can they continue on what they, the things they plan for? That is a through line, I think, between all 3 of the books. So if you were to go pick up the Big Burn, you'll understand kind of what that is as well. But it's cool to see them carry on some sort of through line, even though that it's a completely different style of book. You can definitely make the case, right, that Skyward and Shadecraft probably fall under the YA genre, right? If you had to.
Spiritual siblings.
But they wouldn't be in the all ages section of a shop, but you can hand them to a teen and feel fine about that. Right. But the Big Burn, maybe, the Big Burn is probably, mature readers, but there's still similar thematic elements to all these books. And I think that's one of those things that makes me just super excited that if Joe and Lee ever come back with any sort of book again, it's why it's an automatic.
I think that's a when, not an if.
I think it is too.
I think it's a lot further in the future than I'd like it to be.
It is,
but I think it's a when.
As we said in the 0 episode for Skyward a few months back, Lee Garbett's currently the ongoing artist on Daredevil, the brand new artist on Daredevil. So when you're the main artist on one of the main books at one of the big 2, the idea is you're going to be on that for a while, and that's going to take up your time. And that's awesome for Lee. He's doing a great job with Stephanie Phillips on that book. Again, as a person who doesn't really read Daredevil, but has read a lot of Daredevil, I'm enjoying the hell out of that book right now. And
it's
I hope
really good.
Hope he's got a great long run doing that. The trade-off, if you have a big long run on one of the big 2 main titles, is you got less time for creator-owned stuff. And so I wouldn't want to sacrifice kind of the stability of having a gig on Daredevil. But hey, man, if they get a break or something like that, and he can slide in and do another book with Joe sometime relatively soon, I'd be so stoked.
Well, not to be callous, but I think what a Daredevil type run, like what he's doing right now, does to a guy is you go from being the guy at the convention who's like 2 free signatures, then $5 after, to $15 a signature starting at the first one.
Oh no!
After you crush it with the big 2 on a huge character and an iconic run. I guess it's too early to call it iconic 3 issues in, but as an avid Daredevil reader and fan, I just can't. I cannot wait for each new issue of this Stephanie Phillips run.
I can speak from current recent experience. I mean, yeah, Lee's at $10 an issue right now. He's with Comic Sketch Art, like many of the main big creators are now. And you know what? Good for him. He should be, because his lines are right now they're crazy long, and they, that's a pain for people who want to meet them, but also that means you're super popular and folks want to see you and you're doing work that people like. And when I saw him recently at a show, he was there with Stephanie Phillips and they were signing Daredevil 1. And that was obviously a thing that everyone was there for. But, I wasn't the only person that had Shadecraft or Skyward. I got Skyward signed by him years ago at a show many years ago, but there were other people there that had the books, the creator-owned books for both Lee and Stephanie, and so it's cool when you can see that. And when someone, a writer or an artist, gets a huge break on a big book at Marvel or DC, it's always awesome. But I enjoy getting to go up to those people at shows and be like, yes, I love Absolute Batman. I love Daredevil. I love Spider-Man. I love that too. But you know what? I also love that indie book you did 10 years ago that probably sold 17 copies. I brought that as well. I've read that. I want to say that I've appreciated youth work from then as well. And Lee Garbett is one of those guys that, as he's gotten more and more work at Marvel and DC, and now that he's on a marquee book, because he's done mainline stuff at Marvel before, but like, if it's like Doctor Strange, but like Doctor Strange ain't Daredevil in Marvel's eyes, and so when you get one of the big books, it's always a huge thing. But yeah, I will I'll always be a fan of his, not because of his big 2 work, but because of books like Skyward and Shadecraft. Awesome.
And with that, do you care to register a rating out of 5 shadows?
This book, it's the only ding I would have would be the clunky parts early, maybe early 4.5, and the idea knowing that I can't get more of it, and which isn't the book's fault, and I understand that. So I would say maybe 4.5. But again, once we get to the back half of issue 2 into the end, I think the story absolutely cooks. Absolutely,
I sat down to read the first issue.
Yeah.
And read the entire series, and then
you're going to go all the way
through. It was like
you're going to go all the way through.
I guess I'm going to reread the whole series because and it's such a breeze.
It is a quick read.
Am I correct in saying they never get into narration boxes again?
That's a good question.
I think he doesn't use that.
He doesn't use that a lot. In terms of,
it came very late in Skyward. And for good reasons. And here, I think it does not come up at all. I think it is all dialogue driven.
Yes, I believe. Actually, I think you're right on that. I think it's very similar that when we see the boxes, when we see narration boxes, someone is speaking in another scene and it's being overlaid on something else that's happening. Yeah, which is what they did in Shadecraft early on. I believe that is still the case here. So you don't have the straight internal monologue that the narration boxes, the thought bubbles or thought boxes allow you.
Which, I totally respect that. Not wanting to use that as a crutch, but that's, now that I'm thinking of it, that would have been the most obvious way to download the brother stuff without the scene. Like, so my name's Eddie and I'm 14 and my brother went into a coma a year ago, yet I'm still living under his shadow. Something like that is like, that's the first draft you delete all of.
I would say, I would imagine someone like Joe Henderson would look at that and be like, no, that's hackney as crap.
That's the opening credits of a CW show.
But I said, I think that's a great catch. I didn't catch that here. I caught that in Skyward. I didn't catch that here, that they went with that same route. And I like that choice. I like that they've decided to make a choice like that multiple times.
Yes.
That they made an intentional choice. We're going to tell our story a certain way where we're not going to have inner monologue. And even if that limits us in something, in some specific way at some specific narrative point, having those kind of guardrails.
Any type of limitation like that just forces creativity.
Exactly. Even if you put them down, they're artificial. You made them. You can bend them, and they did in Skyward eventually. But that idea of we want to tell our story this way, we want to represent it on the page this way, and we're gonna have to work around these things. I love that idea of just making a choice and sticking with it. and saying this is the style that our stories are going to be told in, and you're not going to get that internal monologue. Everything that comes out is going to be spoken to someone. I like that. That's a great catch for this book, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We do not have an announcement yet for what the next book will be, so tune in next week for another Zero. Wait. Next week is the Creator, and then after that,
next week for a great interview with Joe Henderson. Yes, and the week after that, we'll surprise you with a new book.
Excellent. Talk to you then. Thank you for listening. Find us, StoriedArcs.com, Blue Sky, Instagram, all the usual places. Thanks for listening.
Peace.